Severance. Now, I know I'm a bit late to the party because the show has been out in full on Apple TV Plus for a couple of months now, but I've just caught up with it and I felt like I needed to unload some of my thoughts about it. The shortest possible version is don't read or listen to anything about it. Don't try to find out what it's about. Just go and watch it blind, like I did. It is absolutely terrific, and it's one of those shows where seeing the premise unfold without knowing where it's going is just so extremely rewarding. If you do want to know more, fine, but I still refuse to spoil any details of the story whatsoever. Instead, I'll try to explain what it feels like to watch it and what's so great about it. So, in terms of genre, it's a very creative amalgam of a mystery thriller, character-driven drama, science fiction with elements of horror, and on top of all of that, workplace comedy in the form of a very dark, but at the same time very hilarious satire of corporate environments. If I were to describe the feeling that I got while watching the show, I would say that it reminded me of two things primarily. The first one would be Black Mirror, because Severance also introduces a very specific concept based in technology, and then explores quite deeply and thoroughly its sociological and psychological implications. Secondly though, and this was probably the stronger aspect, it reminded me of Lost in the way that it utilizes the mystery box mechanics. Severance, like Lost, is very adept at feeding you tiny crumbs of what's actually going on and very often answering a question with two more questions. Couple that with its phenomenal use of cliffhanger endings to the episodes, and it makes for a very gripping viewing where you just want to watch more because you need to know what happens next, how it all ties together, what next reveals are around the corner. It's very well performed and shot. It has a pretty distinct look, especially with all the all-white office spaces, the endless labyrinthian corridors, and the use of geometry and symmetry in the shots. There's some very creative use of color in some of the key scenes. The music is fantastic, and the main theme just still rings in my head after finishing the finale. And I will say something about the nature of the finale that is at the same time praise and a sort of disclaimer. The show's first season ends on a massive cliffhanger, and it's very clear that this is not yet a finished story. In fact, the majority of the plot lines are far from being resolved, and we, the audience, have no idea yet as to what is actually going on in terms of the big picture. Which is cool, because we know that the second season is coming, it's been confirmed already, and it's okay to leave the audience hungry for more. But it also means that it's a sort of difficult task to review and sort of assess this first season, because I don't think it should exist in a vacuum, because we don't yet know how the next one or ones will build upon this first one. If the show maintains its quality and manages to develop and ultimately resolve the storylines in a satisfying way, I think it has the potential to be one of the better shows I've seen ever. And it would be tempting to say the first season already is that, but if it turns out the next episodes don't live up to it and mess up the story, that for me, it would sort of retroactively spoil even this first season. I mean, you can make a case that you should assess each season of a show in a vacuum, but I think it depends on the nature of that show. I like to assess a story in its complete form from beginning to end, and there are some shows that, even despite having multiple seasons, sort of manage to keep each one as a somewhat closed arc, and you can look at each of them in a vacuum, let's say, in a disconnect from the others. Homeland would be a good example, where you have the same cast of characters and the overarching story is the same, but each season focuses on a different plot. Severance doesn't do that, so just be aware of that fact. And so I say again, thus far it's been phenomenal. It remains to be seen whether it'll stay the same after all is said and done, but I admit I do have high hopes.